YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, I'm going over my end of November wrap-up. So going into the end of the month, I kind of expected I wasn't going to be doing as much reading as I did in the first half of the month because Thanksgiving happened and it was just family and cooking, and then it's just been bananas. So I did not get as many books read as I did in the first half of the month, but I still managed to squeeze in 5 books, one of which was very long. So I feel like I'm still killing it. But without any further ado, let's just get into the books I read. Let's do some reviews. Let's talk about books. First category is fantasy, and I read 2 of those. To start things off, I read Song of the Crimson Flower by Julie C. Dow. And I was super interested to read this one because, honestly, Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, Julie C. Dow's debut, is incredible. It's one of my favorite books. It is legit amazing. And then her follow-up to that, Daughter of the Blazing Phoenix, dope name, not so good of a book. I was really disappointed by it. So this is her 3rd book, slightly related to the other 2. It's kind of a series, but more episodic, I would say. This one, you could read it as a standalone, but it is take place in the world of the other 2 books, so it's more richer experience if you've read the other 2, but whatever. You could read it on its own if you wanted. And I was hoping this one was gonna be like killing it. It's gonna be back to like that level of her debut, which was awesome. And alas, it was not. I'm just gonna get straight to the point here. It's not anywhere near as good as Force of a Thousand Lanterns, but it's also better than Daughter of the Blazing Phoenix, so there's that. Like in the end, I gave it 3.5 stars. It's doing okay. I feel like if maybe I hadn't read her debut, I would not have been disappointed. I was trying to like be more objective in my reading of the book because I'm expecting it to be that incredible book again, and it hasn't happened. So I just think maybe that book was just that book, and the other books are different books, so I can't like really compare them, even though they are part of the same series, so it would make sense to compare them, but I'm just trying to stay objective. However, this book is kind of cool because it is dealing with like a Vietnamese fairy tale kind of story, and I hadn't really read anything from a Vietnamese perspective, so there's that. I was really interested in that. We're following Lan and Bao, and basically Bao is kind of a poor boy, and Lan is like this daughter of like a court member, so she's like fancy, and he's like in love with her. And he's really shy, and he goes and plays her a flute every night. It's like very fairy tale. And then Bao ends up confessing to Lan, like, it's me, I've been playing you the flute every night. It's not the guy that you're engaged to, because he's kind of a twat. And she's just like, get the fuck out of here. Like, it's not the best time to like tell this girl, hey, your fiance, this guy you think you're in love with, doesn't actually like you. He's never talked about you. He's a dick. Hey, but I like you. Not the time, bro. Wrong time to bring that up. So she obviously does not react well. And she's basically like, get the fuck out of here, you peasant. And like, sad Bao. And he gets cursed by a witch, so now he's a flute. You know, because that's the logical next step of this situation. And he ends up back in her, like, in her boat area of her yard, and she's like, oh, the flute, I'm sad, I was mean to Bao. And then she has a flute, and then Bao comes out of the flute, and she's like, why were you in this flute? And he's just like, this witch cursed me, I gotta find my true love. And she's like, I'll help you. And he's like, yeah, no thanks. And she's like, no, like, I'm gonna help. And so they go off on this adventure to try to find the witch, to get the witch to take off the curse on Bao so he doesn't have to be a flute. Fairy tales, you guys, they're crazy. And along the way, you can kind of assume that Lan and Bao are going to fall in love for real. And if I'm looking at it from completely an objective perspective, is this poorly written? No, it's not. It's just a fairy tale. And fairy tales are kind of nonsensical, but she still has this like whimsical, magical writing style that makes it feel like special, kind of. I don't know if special's the right word, but like whimsical. You feel like whimsy while you're reading it, and that's like an important thing. However, is it very complex? Like, are the characters complex? Is this an interesting dynamic we haven't seen before? No, we've seen it done before a lot. This is YA fantasy. It's very heavily a YA fantasy book. and it fits in. You know, it's not standing apart from the rest. So that's kind of also why I gave it 3.5 stars. I couldn't really rate it any higher because it's cool that it's Vietnamese inspired, so it does have that. That makes it unique. But overall, like, the general themes of the story are very not unique. So one of those. Yeah, it's fun. It has some laughs. It kind of feels like it's wrapping up some loose ends of the original story arc. And it's got some laughs, it's got some adventure, it's got some swoons and some romance. It's just, I would say it's just definitely for perhaps a younger audience. I don't really see a lot of crossover potential with this book. It's not very much an adult. I'm not the target audience for this as an adult, but I feel like for a younger reader, it's going to be kick-ass. And it's also good from an adult perspective. It's well written. It's just not the most exciting, most interesting book I have read, but it's still pretty good. So yeah, I recommend. I also read A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. And I've been wanting to read this one for so long. It seems really, really, really cool. It's a fantasy world, and in it, they have rival heirs. So essentially, if the queen has 2 daughters, those 2 daughters, they get to live until they've come of age, and then one has to kill the other to be the heir. It's gonna be a sister slaughter fest. That's just the world that they live in. And in the end, I did give this 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. Is it the best thing? No, but it's pretty darn good. I enjoyed it. I could not put it down. It is a quick read. I think it's like 350 some pages. Mind you, this is the ARC, so I'm not sure what the page count is in the final draft, but in the ARC, it was about 350 something pages. So it was a really quick read. I read this all in one day. I just powered through it. But it was pretty good. I had fun reading it. I think the thing that sticks out the most here is the world building, because this is a completely unique fantasy world. It's not based on another culture or anything like that. It's not based, you know, in any culture I can think of. It's a completely new culture, completely new world, has nothing to do with like our cultures on Earth. Also, there was this one really significant thing that I don't think gets brought up enough in fantasy literature, and it's the idea of preachiness. There's a lot of books out there that have a message, and for example, if you have a person of color on the cover, you would assume reading the book that their skin color has some bearing on the story. And actually in this one, it really doesn't. It's kind of an interesting, refreshing take on it, because people are just all different colors. There's green people, for heaven's sakes. There's green, brown, white, whatever color people are. It's like such a non-issue to anybody in the book. In this book, they don't have racism. This world doesn't have racism. People are brown, people are white, people are green. Doesn't matter. Also, people are casually queer. The story isn't about having to come out or be accepted as a queer person. People are just queer in this. I also really just liked having a world where people are casually like that. Like, there's the main character, Eva, her best friend is this boy, Fallon, and he likes kissing other boys, and he just casually goes about flirting with boys, and it's never brought up as being like a thing. You know what I mean? It's not an issue in the book. People just have sex with whoever they want to have sex with in this world. Like, homophobia and racism are not things in this world. So it was really interesting seeing just like a very diverse cast and it not being the point of the book. So I really enjoyed that, because there's so many books that, like, as soon as you see there's a diverse cast, the book's going to be about the fact that it's diverse. And I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing, but it's nice to see a book that just shows it working. Like, racism and homophobia don't exist in this world. People are just who they are. So it was fascinating to see a story that wasn't about race or sexuality struggles. It just was accepted in this world. They never talk about how it's accepted in this world. It just is. So it was like a subtle distinction that I found very fascinating. I think the main thing that people like differentiate themselves with is that in this world there's multiple races of people. Like, there's humans that have magic, then they have bloodkin, which are basically like kind of like vampires, and then they have fae, and then they have the chimeran. And the chimeran people, you know, like chimera, they have animal parts too. So like it would be like a dude who has like horns of like a gazelle or something. Do gazelles have horns? They would have some type of horns. Like, you get what I'm saying. But it's people who have like animal characteristics, but those people are kind of they're not the bad guys, it's just everyone treats them as if they're monsters, even though they're not monsters. So I think that's the main conflict of the book, but it has nothing to do with their sexuality or their skin tone. So I was refreshed by that. Like I mentioned earlier, the main struggle of this book is Eva, who has to eventually fight her sister Isidore to the death if one of them is going to be queen. There's no getting out of it. That's just what they do in this world. One of them's gonna have to kill the other. I mean, I don't know why. It seems like an arbitrary rule, but that's just what they do. And there's twists and turns, and it's very much a magical adventure story. She's learning how to use magic in it. And overall, the world that was created here is so rich and interesting and completely unique. And his magic system is very unique. And all of that was amazing. I was really impressed with the world building here. Like, is it the most unique story I've ever seen? No, like I've seen like different iterations of this story before. Like, you know, two people have to fight to the death to be the heir. Like, I've seen it at least several times. It's not like unique, but the world that this takes place in is so rich and diverse and interesting and is very detailed that even though all of the things in this world are make-believe and not based on anything in our reality, I had no problem understanding the world. So the info, there wasn't an info dump. The info that was told throughout the story made sense. The magic made sense. The rules made sense. So like basically the world building here is killer, and that really helped me enjoy the story a lot. Definitely, I think this is more of a YA story. I mean, as an adult, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very rich in its fantasy elements. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's much of a crossover book. I would say this is probably just great for younger readers too. But I really enjoyed it. I think it was fun. I'm kind of like curious what the next book is going to be like. Like, I'm like intrigued. So overall, yeah, I'm glad I read this. It was pretty fun. Next category is fantasy romance, and I read 2 of those. I finally finished the ACOTAR series, except for the little novella. I have finished the series. This is the finale. I did it. It was my goal to read all of the Sarah J. Maas books this year, and like, I'm killing it. Handled it. Did it. So, A Court of Wings and Ruin. I don't know how I would feel about it. I gave it 4 stars in the end. I had fun reading it. Overall, it was a fun story. I enjoyed it, but do I think it was overly long? Yep, I do. I feel like this could have been at least 100 pages shorter. There's so much meandering going on that I was just slogging through at points. Like, it's very meandery. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different stories happening. And it's just like, get to the point. Like, there's so much happening that I was just like, like, I don't even have words. I just have sound effects of how I felt. But I got through it. I enjoyed it in the end. It was pretty okay. It's just like, overall, I'm going to be honest. I know that a lot of people are really big fans of this series. To me, personally, I find it a little uninspired. But that's not necessarily bad, because there's a lot of books that are maybe not so inspired, but they're just fun to read. So for that, fun to read, but maybe not all that inspired, that fits this. Like, I did have fun reading it at the end of the day. So that's really what matters. Even if I feel like I've read better things. And I'll point this out because personally, if I'm going to pick a Sarah J. Maas series, I'm a Throne of Glass kind of girl. I loved that series intensely. It's great to me. This one, not as good to me. I think there's a good comparison to be had here because you have Feyre doing a lot of plotting in this book and trying to, you know, undermine things and like set things up to fall and like her plotting. And while I appreciate, you know, the criminal mastermind element of it, the way she goes about doing it is very much like, did you guys see what I did? I did this. You know, it's very much like obvious what she's doing. And I appreciated her being kind of, you know, sassy, manipulative kind of character. Like, you know, making things happen. I appreciated it, but she was kind of heavy-handed in the way it was written. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very much, did you guys see what I did here? Like, it's over the top. Whereas in Throne of Glass, when Aelin sets things up, it's very subtle. Like, she does things throughout the book they don't really necessarily have a point until you get to the end of the book and you're like, that's what all those things meant. Like, she was setting shit up behind the scenes and the reader doesn't know until the end, and you're like, you get shocked with everyone else. So I think I like that approach to being sneaky rather than being in on the sneakiness. I want to see the big reveal, I would say. I feel like that's more interesting to me than this one is. And that kind of goes into my saying it is uninspired. But at the end of the day, did I enjoy this? Yeah, I had fun reading it. It was a fun series. It's just not the best thing I've read, but am I happy to have read it? Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It has like a lot of cool fae elements happening. It has a lot of cool stuff. It's just, you know, I've seen better things, but I overall enjoyed it. Yeah, it's just not the best, but it's fun. So, 4 stars. I also read The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, and this was one of my most anticipated books of 2019. I had to read it right now, and I gave it 3 stars. I'm just gonna tell you right off the bat here. In the end, I just kind of felt a little disappointed in the book. I thought it was going to be a lot cooler than it ended up being, but it does have some style going for it. It's Victorian era, 1870s era New Orleans. So already you got like that whole like aesthetic, which I love. And also they put vampires in it. So you got vampires and Victorian New Orleans. Like, oh my gosh, all of that. Like, it sounds incredible, right? So for style and setting, excellent. Like, I have no complaints. However, let's just talk about the main character for a minute. This main character, Celine. This might be a me thing, but I effing hate her. I'll explain my hatred. It's a lot of heroines that I get like this, and I see them a lot in YA fantasy in particular. And basically, these heroines are all of the worst Gryffindor qualities combined into a person. A Gryffindor characteristic, for example, would be bravery. Bravery is great. However, the flip side of bravery is recklessness. And, Celine is so reckless. It's just like there's not a thought in her head before she goes off and does something. And yeah, we get it, you're brave for doing that, but you're also a fucking idiot. Another like quality for Gryffindors would be integrity, you know, standing up for what you believe in no matter what, which is great. However, it also can turn into just stubbornness, which is also a shitty character flaw. You know, sticking up for what you believe in because you think it's right doesn't work if it's not actually right. So yeah, she believes in things and she sticks up for them, but it's like, but girl, you're wrong. Like, you're very stubborn in how wrong you are, and I don't like you. She is stubborn and reckless. Oh man. Like she is just obnoxious. I couldn't stand her. Couldn't stand her at all, and I really wanted to. I really wanted to like her, but she's so obnoxious that I'm just like, go away. Go get bit by vampires. Like, I don't care. Like, bleh. And also, like, the world building of the magic system in here with the vampires is very flimsy. It is. Like, they barely even say the word vampire, if I'm being honest. And there's supposed to be all these other creatures, and there's supposed to be this conflict that you don't really find out, kind of, until the very end, and then even then, it's super vague. So I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is the point of all of this? Like, I don't understand any of, like, the supernatural drama going on here. It's happening, but I don't know why it's happening, and it doesn't make sense. And it's like, is it me? Am I not smart enough to get what's going on here? But I don't think that's true, because this is also very much a YA story. Like, I don't really think this is a crossover novel. But, like, it's just obnoxious, I think is the best way to put it. However, stylish. It's the 1870s New Orleans with vampires. Style and setting is killing it. But the characters and like the plot and the magic system aren't explained, and it's obnoxious. So, 3 stars. It's like, I've read worse things. It's not poorly written necessarily. There are bits in here that I think were very inspired, and I love the writing in parts of here. is just it's just not set up well. It's this flimsy feeling, and I really wanted to like this one, but it felt so flimsy that I couldn't really get into it. However, the writing was quite good in parts, so it's not terrible. It's just I could have been done a lot better, so I gave it 3 stars. Last category is historical romance, and I read one of those. I finally read The Duchess War by Courtney Milan, mainly because so many of my friends have recommended this to me repeatedly, and I was like, alright, let's do this. I'm into like feminist historical romance, let's see what this is about. And like the thing is, I didn't like it. I'm just being real blunt in these reviews today, but basically I tried. I really wanted to like this one, and as I was reading it, I was seeing things, I'm like, yeah, you know, that friend who recommended this to me, I see why they would like that, and I see why this friend would like this element. Like, I understand why all of my friends liked it. However, all of the things that I think they would like are not things I like. This is historical romance, and it's a very slow-paced one. It's not particularly funny, and the romance is slow burn, and I hate slow burn romances. I really do. I don't have the patience for them. I'm like, just do it. Just get together. I don't have the patience to see you like glance at each other from across the room the whole book. It's so dull to me. So slow burn, not my deal at all. But if you like slow burn, like, you'll probably really like this. You're following Minnie and Robert, and both of them kind of have secret pasts and secret identities. And they're intrigued by each other. Robert's a duke, Minnie is this woman who is hiding from her past, and Robert is like, hey, you're kind of smart and stuff, like, I like you. And she's just like, no, because you're too public and I'm gonna get in trouble. And he's just like, nah. And she's like, and then they finally get together. And it does do some cool, interesting things in it. For example, both the characters are virgins on their wedding night, so there's that. You don't see that a lot. There's also kind of open communication about their sexuality and like what they like and dislike, so it's seeing people like mutually have sex they enjoy, so that was cool. There's not a lot of it in here. I think there's kind of just like 1 or 2 scenes, and I'm grasping at straws here, trying to find the things I really liked about it. I didn't think it was particularly poorly written. I thought it was indicative of the genre, I would say. So people who like a slower paced, slow burn romance, especially historicals, were really gonna like this book. It's just, for me personally, I don't like the pacing of this book, and I don't like the slow burn romance of it. It was just obnoxious to me, but a lot of people really do like that, and I do think it was well written. I don't feel like it was particularly poorly executed. So if you are a romance fan who is maybe not into a heavily smutty book, and you like a slow burn romance, and you like historicals, this is gonna be your jam. You are gonna love it. So I recommend it for those people. For someone like me who likes their books a little spicier, it's gonna come off as a bit bland, essentially. So it's not bad, it's just not for me. So I gave it like 3 stars. This is like my neutral rating. I'm like, it's not for me, but I can see why other people like it. So we're just gonna move on. Yeah, 5 more books. I was hoping they would be better books. I didn't really have a standout book during this period. They were all kind of just like, well, average, I guess. Like, I was kind of having a rough time. Although I did enjoy A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. That one I felt was very unique. So if I'm going to pick a top book out of these 5, I'd probably go with that one. Very unique. A couple of the books were kind of disappointing. And then some were just like, basically everything was like average or slightly above average. There wasn't a lot of stellar books, but nothing really terrible. So I'm counting it as a win. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? And if so, did you like them? Did you hate them? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.